Hello YouTube, I'm back by popular request. Let's get started. Today I have a topic, which is this meme character I've got here. The infamous CHUDJAK, the nothing ever happens guy. In case you're not familiar with this meme, I brought a couple samples that we could look at and discuss. Just a couple notes. The intended format of these videos that I'm doing is going to be such that if you're just listening, I want to be able to say and explain enough that you won't have to have the video on. I find that I myself like to listen to a lot of content, whether it's a book being read or just someone talking. And oftentimes people are driving or doing something else while they're watching these or listening to these videos. So I don't want to make the video necessary. Though for some stuff, if you aren't familiar with the images or the visuals I'm discussing already, it might be a little bit hard to follow. So up here on the screen, I have the picture of this meme character, the CHUDJAK. This first one is him in front of a clock. And it says, well, would you look at the time? And the time at every point on the clocks is nothing. So it's a fun image that's expressing the idea that nothing ever happens. Let's look at another image. And please forgive any difficulties with the video or the audio. This is my first time recording in a while, so I am giving all these things a new try. Okay, here's another famous image of the CHUDJAK. We see him in front of a whiteboard, tapping the sign, but nothing ever happens. So this image is often posted when, say, people are talking about news events like, there's going to be an attack here. The stock market's going to crash, etc., etc. Then people will post this image here that says nothing ever happens because or tapping the sign to remind people, you thought something was going to happen. Well, it turns out that nothing ever happens. And then I think I had one more image. Here. And then this one is depicting a CHUDJAK at a casino, which is going to relate to another related topic that I am going to talk about towards the end of this video, which is the financialization of everything and the manufacturings of happenings. So this gambling betting imagery is just to suggest that if you want to bet on something happening, the winning bet is typically nothing ever happens. I'll get into this. I would say in general, you could both agree that for most days, most of the time, nothing ever happens. However, that doesn't mean that you should bet. You could simultaneously bet on nothing ever happening and as well things also happening. You can do both. Okay, so let's get back on topic. So I've introduced and shown some examples of this meme of the Chud or the CHUDJAK. He's a variation on this other meme, a related meme if you search up, called the POLJAK, who himself is a subset of what you would call the WOJAK, the meme. If people are interested in future videos, I could go into more of the sort of variations and histories on memes. Actually, I'll make a note of this right now. I consider a lot of these meme images, let's see, Chinese input turned on. Meme images as a folk or visual language. So a kind of, they're like in the church, you'll have iconography where certain images and things, they're not arbitrary. It's like a language. You have discrete things that you could pick out that have particular meanings. So in the same way, just like how there's church music, and then you could also have like secular music, instruments, guitars, and stuff like that. In a similar way, we could look at how uh, there's an emergent sort of popular iconography or language in the form of these memes. Anyway, so this CHUDJAK, he falls under this category of figures we could call the Wojaks, who are used to express just a lot of the feelings or sentiments people have. So usually they're associated with internet nerd types that resemble the Polejack or the CHUDJAK themselves. But that's what makes this imagery so powerful, in that it concisely and without words expresses these ideas. So, anyways, the CHUDJAK, it's associated with this text, nothing ever happens. So I made a couple notes just to perhaps help clarify my thoughts or more clearly express what's going on with this image. So I wrote associated with bored, frustrated, and or determined males. So notably, CHUDJAK is a male. I think one thing that's happening on the internet is with the Wojak characters that's being expressed is there are clear gender dynamics. So the CHUDJAK type is very clearly often a male type character, for lack of a less polite term, he's often associated with this sort of incel internet analyst type person. So that's why I also included bored and frustrated. Perhaps CHUDJAK doesn't have much social action going on. So he sees a pretty girl, but she doesn't want to go on a date with him. So what's he gonna do to save the West? He can't follow the Chad character and just spontaneously have more children right now immediately and rebuild the West. He might not even have his own castle to build. So CHUDJAK, bored and frustrated in the sense that things are not happening. However, I included this word determined because if you look at the expression that the CHUDJAK has, I mean, CHUDJAK, maybe that one's not as good. When he's pointing at the board, he looks a bit more angry. But like this one, with would you look at the time, CHUDJAK is looking pretty determined and stoic in a way. His cortisol, his stress levels might be a little bit higher than is preferred, but clearly he has not given up. He's standing and walking. He's not lying down and admitting defeat. Okay, second point I had for this understanding CHUDJAK essay point thing, I wrote first world problems. So I don't know if people say that anymore, but this is kind of saying looking first world problems would be something that isn't immediate survival. So it's not like he's starving or somebody's pointing a gun at him, or these scenarios that people will talk about in actual physical war environments. People will disparagingly talk about first world problems in the sense that, oh, I'm stressed out about which university I'm going to get into, that sort of thing. So I wrote, CHUDJAK is typically depicted as a fairly affluent suburbanite type living in a quote-unquote boring neighborhood where nothing ever happens. So in many ways, I mean, you could look at the goals of a lot of people, and it is to make things rather boring and flat. Like the goal is to make a nice environment where nothing ever happens. That is the peaceful suburb environment. Many people's American dream might be the proverbial nothing ever happens area. Okay, so the CHUDJAK character, he presents this kind of question or problem, which is, on the one sense, this nothing ever happens is a kind of situation that people aspire for, that they want. But then once you are in a kind of nothing ever happens situation, it's like people, especially this sort of male, bored, frustrated, and/or determined character, is on the other hand itching for something to happen. So how do we solve this conundrum or this problem? So I came across this interesting quote on the Elon app. That is X. On this video, you could see I put my handle on there, Post Nerd One. So go ahead and follow me if you don't already. Right. Anyway, so on X, you could follow a lot of the ongoing social discourses. Like if you look on X, you search CHUDJAK, you're going to find a lot of great exemplars of this idea that I'm discussing in this video. Anyways, the related quote I found was this: would you rather be a gardener in a war or a warrior in a garden? And I think this quote I kind of saw associated with this writer who I'm not condoning or recommending. It's Yukio Mishima, I think is his name, who I guess in some ways you could call him a kind of chudjak. But I just write his name here to sort of bring up the citation for where a lot of these discourses or dialogues are going on. Anyways, back to this quote. So would you rather be a gardener in a war or a warrior in a garden? A garden is like a peaceful place. There's not a war going on. There's delicate things. There's beautiful flowers and plants. And, you know, if you are using tools or knives, you're using them for peaceful purposes. I don't have a reference right on me, but I think there's some passages in Scripture, as in Christian Scripture, Bible, that say something, things along, making a contrast between tools for war, like swords and spears, and then tools for peacetime, like farming tools, basically. So we could see that there's a kind of contrast between gardens as peaceful places and wars for war zones. Though I'm sure, you know, you interview the local wildlife at a garden, whether it's flies or dogs or cats or birds, whatever you're talking about, they could probably give you some war tales about what goes on in a garden. In any case, so we have this contrast. It's the gardener is the person who, let's say, identifies with the gardening, the sort of peacetime environment. And then the warrior being contrasted, the warrior is the person who their main gig, the main thing they do is fight or prepare and train for fight. So my analysis here is a lot of the chudjaks, they're asking this kind of question: would you rather be the gardener in the war or the warrior in the garden? So when things are peaceful, when there's no happenings, let's just say that that's kind of a garden environment. So a lot of the nothing ever happens sort of people, they may look at the garden as being boring and say, I'm waiting for something to happen. I'm itching for some action because if my main thing is, say, being a warrior, being the Chud Knight, you're not going to be able to win your prizes. You're not going to be able to do your struggle to show what you're doing unless something breaks out, unless there's a happening. Of course, if you're a gardener in the garden, then you're more than happy to go about gardening. So the contrast of the gardener and the warrior in the war versus the garden is to show that there's a kind of mismatch. There's this, like I wrote here, the boredom or the frustration that's happening. So the Chudjak character, is he asking himself, am I actually the warrior? Am I itching for something to happen? Or like here with the image of the Chudjak at the gambling table. You know, you play a game like poker or something, maybe most of the hands are kind of boring, nothing ever happens. But things heat up, things get exciting where, you know, you have a really good hand or something where you're going to actually try to win all the chips on the table. But if you don't really have any cards that could do anything, you'll probably lose if you get in a fight. Then uh, nothing is happening. You're just kind of, I guess you might even say, like, you're kind of like bleeding out chips. It's kind of like slow and painful. Hence the frustration and the boredom that I mentioned in the notes. Okay, so yeah, as I said, CHUDJAK is kind of asking this question, and uh, what's kind of a practical answer to this question? So I think the things I'm going to say, I mean, I guess it's kind of generic advice. Most people would. I don't think I'm going to get any serious objections about what I'm going to say for these general advice points as what constitutes like just practical wisdom. So I wrote, so in the time nothing ever happens, we prepare for times of happenings. So if you are indeed the warrior in the garden, like the CHUDJAK, I mean, if you keep your tools sharp, you carefully do your work, you observe the seasons, you're not wasting away in the garden. I mean, you might be itching for a battle or something to happen, but you're not. You're not. It's not like lounging around or drinking beers or whatever. If somebody comes into the garden, it might not be the most exciting thing ever. If you're just sitting there quietly cultivating your garden, you could be ready for when something does happen. But the actions themselves that you're doing is your whether using the quiet to gather your spirit, to focus your attention, to focus your energy. You're waiting for something to happen. You're watching, in a sense. You're monitoring the situation, but you're not doing the actual fighting. Let's see. I wrote another note here. Small incremental efforts. For example, if you're a farmer, if you're spreading the seeds or working the ground, you're doing some little task. You're doing these in hopes of a bigger profit. So, as a gardener or the farmer, when you're doing a little bit of work, you aren't getting a happening immediately. However, you're trusting that by putting in these little efforts, by forcing yourselves to act in a positive and determined way, even if nothing is happening immediately, then your patience will be paid off. And who knows, you might get a big happening, like you have a wildly successful harvest later. So there is like a happening. There's rain. That's like a happening if it's boring California weather all the time. Like where I'm from California, and then rain happens. People will talk about this as like a happening. Something happens. In any case, what the chud is doing in the garden is he's making these little efforts to try to prepare for something bigger to happen. And I wrote this next note. The purpose of exercises of all sorts is to use a time of relative peace, so being in the garden, in order to learn the correct movements for a time of happenings or action. So, looking at the CHUDJAK image here and talking about what's happening. So here, like this idea of sitting at a gambling table, or market just closed, going on your Robinhood app, going to do some stocks. It's like the Wayne Gretzky quote: "You're gonna miss every shot you don't take." So a person has to pay a little bit, give a little bit of risk, set oneself up by doing some little move in hopes that maybe sometime there's going to be a happening or a big payoff. So like this CHUDJAK, looking at the chips here, the sort of the positive answer I read to the gardener in the war, the warrior in the garden question, is that oftentimes the sort of wise or prudent move to make will be seemingly very boring. Like nothing ever happens. You just continue to do these little actions, hoping that maybe something will come up. You aren't forcing the action itself to happen. So, for example, if you're training to get in a fight, a lot of the things you're gonna do are not going to be actually fighting. Like if you're doing, push-ups or lifting weights or something, that's not the same as like actually, throwing a punch at somebody. A lot of the training exercises, they're in order to build muscles, cultivate strength, build movements, heighten your awareness, et cetera, et cetera. Different things. The activities are not always directly related to what you would do in a happening, and in that sense, that's why a lot of the work that goes into preparing or making success is actually quite boring, especially to watch. So the CHUDJAK, in this sense, expresses this an insight into the reality of how a lot of things happen. Um, People will like to look at events or happenings, markers that are exciting. For example, a wedding, like two people get married, um, or like a contest. Somebody wins at a contest, surviving a disaster, the completion of a journey. But through that journey itself, a lot of the individual steps are playing the role playing the role of the CHUDJAK. Everything is quite boring. So when I see on the internet and stuff a lot of these CHUDJAKs that are going around, I think it would be an error to say like, oh yeah, look at all these people posting CHUDJAKs. They're a bunch of lazy, do nothing people. Um, when a happening does break out, are you going to be able to meet or match the levels of all these chuds? It's actually we don't know the answer to these questions. I mean, you could look at somebody and oftentimes you could guess or gauge their level for certain sorts of stuff, but a lot of the efforts that people put in are very quiet. They could be very internal or mental. So on the outside, it looks like nothing ever happens, right? But I mean, once again, I just noticed this now, like in this CHUDJAK image here with the clock. I mean, his hands are behind his back. What what sort of secrets or interesting things does he have going on behind his back? Does he have a revolver? I don't know. Is he gonna like pull out a violin and start playing violin? We don't know what's happening with CHUDJAK here. All right. So that's the basic discussion or analysis I have of this CHUDJAK character and this handful of images that I popped up on the stream. Let's now talk a little bit about financialization and the manufacture of happenings. So these are kind of terms or phrases that probably other people have expressed in various places, especially kind of business blog type places. But I'm just expressing sort of bridging two languages. So on the one hand, the meme internet slang language, and then sort of, I guess, business tech language if we're talking about financialization. So I think one way to look at the modern world right now is money and finance. The tentacles are creeping in and starting to affect everything. So in the past, like I'm sure people would bet on sports games or a lot of things that are going on. But what's new in modern times is that a lot of this stuff is becoming extremely easy to do with large quantities of money with total complete strangers. And you don't have to walk into a specialized venue like some, fancy hotel or horse betting place. So in many ways, the criticisms about the aesthetics of the digital age being like lame and uncool, like I understand all that, because now, for example, to gamble or something, you don't even have to have style. You don't have to get dressed up and go into a fancy lobby and show off your cash money with watches and other fancy stuff. I mean, you could just be a guy in sweatpants, in the parking lot at McDonald's. Like, who knows what people are doing all the time? That's the CHUDJAK poker face is a real deal. Anyways, so financialization and the manufacture of happenings. I think one thing that's related with this CHUDJAK image is, on the one hand, everything is flat, nothing's happening. I'm talking, making this video from the United States, so there's no wars or anything in most places breaking out on the ground that people could actively see. A lot of people, like me right now, are just sitting in some room in front of a screen, in front of a computer of some sort. So on the physical level, for a lot of people, most of the time, nothing is happening. Yet there are multiplications of these potentially big events. Like, with just a couple clicks and shufflings, most people could actually probably, I'll just make up a number, you could probably gamble at least 50% of your net worth if you use the appropriate financial credit, etc., instruments. It's made it very easy to do that. We can look at how other information technologies allow people to do kind of similar ramping up high stakes activities. For example, like a rather unpleasant example, but like internet pornography or like adultery, stuff like this. In the past, people might have actually had to, meet up in secret and do stuff. Nowadays, you could just go on your computer or your phone, flip on and activate, whatever you want. And from a sort of spiritual, noetic, your life type of perspective, it's like right at your fingertips, you could activate a bad happening. I mean, doing some kind of sin or bad act, it's kind of happening, like a bad happening. You could make that happen instantly. Just like I said, you could gamble away, a huge proportion of your net worth, especially if you have like a lot of kind of cash asset type stuff. You could really make it or break it super fast. Now, I think, so actually that's a good segue to go into the point that so it's really easy to get yourself in a lot of trouble really fast on the internet. On the other hand, I think too that it is with this financialization, manufacturing of happenings, then also too, it's like people use these tools, myself included, for example, making a YouTube video right now. I mean, in the past, some friends and stuff have liked my videos, but nothing has ever gotten really popular. But it's just like theoretically possible based on the platforms, based on what you're using. Could this video get 1 million views by tomorrow? Like, I don't think it will happen, but it is possible. And if I do make a video, I do put it out, then I open up those possibilities to happen. I'm playing the CHUDJAK that's willing to put some chips on the table. Anyways, so related with the internet, information technology, etc., we can see that the financialization and the manufacture of happenings pioneered probably like largely the way in which it happens is through these tech and finance companies, fintech bros. It's like everything is primed. It's a delicate balance. We're like on the knife's edge, and a happening could happen like super fast if people put in the chips. It's just like if you really wanted to like gamble a ton of money, there are ways to do it. I'm not gonna tell you how to do it or necessarily condone on the video, but one's life could change in an instant, where it's like before I was worried about getting to work on time because then my boss would yell at me and maybe I'd not get this and this raise and make the month's rent. Okay, that situation could flip like super fast. Like winning the lottery fast Only now it's not just the lottery, which only happens at these whatever relatively infrequent intervals. There's only like a drawing every now and then, and very few people get these big payoffs. Now we're living in this age where like CHUDJAK on the knife edge, where there's all these scenarios and situations being set up such that for anybody, if they hook themselves up and buy the chips in the proper thing, that really stuff could blow up super fast. So with all that being said, this video is getting a bit longer than I planned, so I'm going to stop recording. Please leave your likes, comments, etc. if you're interested in seeing more of this kind of content, or if you have questions or topics that you would like me to discuss. I hope the video here was entertaining or edifying in some way, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you very much for stopping by.